Happy New Year and welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, Britain is no longer a member of the European Union, and given our location, it's only right that we dedicate today's show to this historic moment. I'll be discussing the details of the deal here in the studio with our business correspondent Simon Pusey. Political activist Femi Oluwole will be joining me to look at some of the potential pitfalls. I'll be asking current affairs analyst Michael Potter what next on the global scene for Britain, and Mite Oduneye, chair of Nigerians in the Square Mile, will be telling us how the deal could benefit Africa. Then later, I'll be looking at the final big company news stories of 2020. The Post-Brexit Deal, announced on Christmas Eve by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission's President Ursula von der Leyen, was pretty late even by Liberal standards. Because of its swift transition through the UK's House of Commons and the House of Lords, the complete picture is yet to emerge in full, although most of the standout features of the deal are now known. For Britain, the main achievement is that the Prime Minister has secured a zero-tariff, zero-quota free trade agreement with the European Union, worth an estimated $910 billion every year. On the three major sticking points, which we've discussed extensively on this show, the following has been agreed. For the level playing field, the two sides have agreed that an independent arbitrator should decide whether future regulatory divergence is sufficiently harmful to permit retaliation through tariffs. On fish, the EU will retain access for just over 5 years, though with its quota cut by 25%. After that, future arrangements will require negotiation. And there will be a system for settling disputes that does not include a role for the European Court of Justice, except for interpreting EU law. As to be expected, there were mixed reactions during Wednesday's Brexit Bill debate in the House of Commons.
And having taken back control of our money, our borders, our laws and our waters by leaving the European Union on January the 31st, we now seize this moment to forge a fantastic new relationship with our European neighbours based on free trade and friendly cooperation.
Mr. Speaker, I'm seeking your clarification. I'm just wondering how on earth the Prime Minister can talk about taking back control of waters when Scottish fishermen are going to have less access and less fish to catch as a consequence of his con deal.
It is, of course, completely unacceptable that this debate is happening now, one day before the end of the transition period. The Prime Minister said he had a deal that was oven ready. That was just about a year ago. Then it was supposed to be ready in July, then September, then November, and finally it arrived on Christmas Eve. And that matters. I will in just a minute. That matters because businesses have had no chance to prepare for the new regulations. Talk to businesses about their concerns. They've got real difficulties now. Many of them already taken decisions about jobs and investment because of the uncertainty. And of course that's made worse by the pandemic. But let me now just go to the deal itself and analyse some of the flaws in the deal. First, let's start with the Prime Minister and what he said on Christmas Eve in his press conference. Because he said this about the deal: there will be no non-tariff barriers to trade. There will be no non-tariff barriers to trade. His words. He wasn't being straight with the British public. That's plain wrong. It's worse than that. It wasn't an aside. It wasn't an interview, an off-the-record remark. It was a scripted speech. There will be no non-tariff barriers to trade. The Prime Minister knows it's not true. Every member of this House knows it's not true.
Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, it's the first show of the year. Happy New Year to you. Was this post-Brexit trade deal the Christmas present Britons wanted?
Well, it looked like it was never going to happen, didn't it? 4.5 years ago is when the vote was first took place, and so long and so many debates and so much controversy later, we finally do have a post-Brexit trade deal. The agreement has now been signed by both sides. It was flown over in a private jet from the Brussels to Boris to sign. So it is now happening, and Boris Johnson urged his MPs to back the deal, saying that it was a new chapter in our national story. The Prime Minister said the deal will allow Britain to take back control of our laws and our lands, everything that we've heard of for so long, for so many years. Labour leader Keir Starmer has ordered his MPs to back it, saying a thin deal is better than no deal. And there's a lot of sort of Theresa May, remember her, she stood up in the House of Commons and said, if you wanted a better deal, you should have backed my one that you voted against a year ago. So a lot of people saying this is ironic because Theresa May came out and said that essentially the same that Boris said about her deal a year ago. And there's pros and cons with both deals, I think. A couple of complaints about the process, of course, there are going to be because it's so late in the day. One MP saying the government was allowed just 5 hours to debate the next 50 years of the future. So this isn't really something MPs have a choice over. It's either back it or it's going to be no deal. Theresa May, who I mentioned, saying we have a deal in trade which benefits the EU, but not a deal in services which would have benefited the UK. So a lot of people saying the negatives of this are for the services industry. And actually, UK banking stocks tumbled on Tuesday when it emerged that the services were not going to be given that much positive sort of future in this deal. Leading banks made up 4 of the 5 biggest fallers on the FTSE. There is still a long way to go, even though we have this trade deal. There will still be lots of changes to how people travel between the EU and the UK, the way we live and work, and things like tariffs. But we seem to be there. A long way to go in terms of the detail. But yeah, we do have a post-Brexit trade deal.
Will we be discussing Brexit over the next couple of months, do you think, Simon?
I'm sure we will. I think there's still lots of I's to dot and T's to cross. So I think there is a lot more devil in the detail. But it's amazing that we're sitting here talking about a trade deal when for months we've been saying another deadline missed and more fury and confusion. They have got together and compromised.
Simon Pusey, thank you as always. As we've witnessed over the past 4.5 years, not everybody is happy with this outcome. Most notably, my next guest, Femi Oluwole, a political activist and co-founder of the pro-European advocacy group, Our Future, Our Choice. Femi Oluwole, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. I was reading your op-ed in The Independent as well as your various social media posts. You said that this deal doesn't get Brexit done. Tell us what's missing.
Not even close. So the arguments we've had around Brexit for the last 4 or 5 years have been centered around sovereignty, the ability of the UK to control its own laws and change its own laws and move away from the EU. It's been around fish. How much of the fish that's in UK waters can UK fishing boats catch? And it's been around tariffs. Will there be tariffs when we try and sell stuff to our main market, which is the European Union? And none of that is concluded. In this deal, you basically have a situation where in 5.5 years, we get an increased amount of fish that we can catch. But then after that, it needs to be negotiated further beyond that, which means that that then gets reviewed in 4 years after that, which means that we're talking 2030 before we actually get to something even close to stable. That's fish. As for sovereignty, control over our laws, we signed a deal which basically creates a level playing field. The moment we change our laws away from the EU's laws in a way that gives the UK businesses a competitive advantage, there will then be discussions on the EU side as to whether or not to then impose tariffs on UK produce in order to prevent UK businesses having a competitive advantage over EU businesses. So sovereignty, tariffs, fish, none of that's resolved. 2020
has been such a difficult year for everybody across the globe. For those of us in Britain, the past 4.5 years, as you quite rightly said, have been really tumultuous, especially for somebody like you, Femi. I know that you're typically trolled on Twitter, though it's important to say that you do have lots of people who support you and enjoy reading your posts. But you have said that you expect 2021 to be full of more political and economic uncertainty. How so?
Well, a lot of it stems from Brexit. So, for example, in 2014, Scotland voted to stay in the UK in their independence referendum. And one of the reasons they were told that they needed to stay in the UK was because don't vote to leave the UK, otherwise you'll be out of the EU. And then 2 years later, we started to drag them out of the EU. So there's a very real risk that there's going to be a hard push for Scottish independence, which would break up the United Kingdom in 2021. There's also going to be the turbulence around Brexit because, this, as I said, this won't be done. There's also going to be issues around the Labour Party because the Labour Party needs to figure out who and what it is because it's just had a recent change in leadership. And we haven't really had a chance to see where that's going to go because everything's been about COVID. So we need to see what the opposition is going to look like. Are they going to work with other parties? Are they going to unite the left? But that's still yet to be seen.
It is very briefly, before we go, because we are running out of time, Femi, you mentioned the Labour Party there. Sir Keir Starmer, you know, some people say he sits on the fence too much, really looking to dominate number 10 Downing Street, or definitely take residence soon. Were you disappointed at his lack of critique over what he describes as a thin Brexit deal?
Yeah, so here's the thing. He's tried to not appear to be a Remainer that hasn't gotten over it. He's tried to appear to be supporting the country in its direction. But the problem is, the biggest thing that's going to affect our country is going to be Brexit. And he needs to make sure that his hands aren't dirty. If he appears to support this too much, he's going to get in trouble. And so I think he needs to start saying, all right, we accept that this is happening, but everything moving forward is just about damage limitation. We do not support this.
Absolutely. Well, Femi Oluwole, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. This new year offers Britain a number of opportunities to cut a dash on the world stage. But can they, given the emergence of the New World Order from 2020? Well, let's ask current affairs analyst Michael Potter. Michael Potter, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. Well, according to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's got Brexit done. Does this mean the end of political feuds, family fallouts, broken friendships and uncertainty?
Well, yes, Juliana, a deal has been done, albeit last minute. But Boris and his advisors have agreed a deal with the EU, which is good news, I suppose, for everybody. So, you know, let's hope that things start to settle down now. You remember we had the referendum 2016, 52% for, 48 against. Very tight referendum. And the last 3 to 4 years has seen an impasse, political stalemate. And now we've got to a new Conservative government in with a reasonable majority. Looks like the Labour government are on board with it as well. So it's all go. And I think it's probably time for families and friends and Remainers and Leavers to, you know, draw a line in the sand now and accept the result. And as a country, as a nation, as a great nation, we need to move on.
We do need to move on. It would be nice if we could draw a line under this, though I suspect, Michael, we'll be talking about Brexit all throughout 2021. You're a business consultant. I know you travel the globe. You'll be in Ghana soon, hopefully in Nigeria in the next couple of months. But I do want your honest perspective, because if you look around the world and you talk to people, you look on social media, some are saying, you know, gone are those glory days that Britain are trying to reach for. Do you think there's an element of truth in that? Do you think the 4.5 years of toing and throwing and scrambling has diminished Britain's global influence at all?
Well, there's a number of points here I'd like to raise. First of all, I remember back in 1973, a long time ago now, when we joined the EU, and you know, there was hostility then in terms of should we join, should we not. We even had a referendum. So we joined in 1973. We had a referendum in 75 as to whether we should remain. And in fact, 17 million, the same number that voted to leave the EU, said we want to remain. So, you know, it's been a long old thing in the EU. Not only have we had the EU and the political problems we've had COVID-19, which is, as we're all aware, has cost the country millions and billions of pounds in funding of wages and all sorts of other things, you know, the economy. And on top of that, we've got the divorce settlement with the EU. So, you know, that's on the negative side. But on the plus side, you know, we now have the opportunity to move forward as a sovereign nation. You know, there's still a lot of choppy water along the way. You know, it's not all going to be a calm sailing. So, but I think for the future, the negatives, the positives outweigh the negatives in terms of the way we're moving. And if I look at my own business, an international business focused on developing markets, you know, emerging markets, the opportunities there are endless. And the UK, with its contacts with the Commonwealth and other nations around the world, you know, has got a great opportunity to move forward.
Absolutely. Well, at least we've got some positive cheer on what has been a really difficult couple of months. Michael Potter, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be discussing what this post-Brexit trade deal could mean for Africa with the chair of Nigerians in the Square Mile, Bite Oduneye. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a moment, I'll be speaking with the chair of Nigerians in the Square Mile, Bite Oduneye. But before then, here's some company news for you. Airlines Ryanair and Wizz Air are to take away the voting rights of UK shareholders in order to protect their status as majority EU-owned companies. Britain and other non-EU investors will lose voting rights when new Brexit trading rules come into force today. By law, airlines operating flights in the EU must be owned by citizens of the EU or other affiliated countries. Ryanair said it was banning its UK shareholders from attending or taking part in its general meetings. Tesla's rocketing share price last year has created an army of millionaires, self-named Teslainaires. Shares in Elon Musk's electric car firm rose more than 700% during 2020 to become the world's most valuable car company. Last month was a milestone for the group as it joined the S&P 500. Tesla shares rocketed and it became one of the top 10 most valuable companies on the index. Insurance giant Admiral has reached an agreement to sell website Confused.com for more than £500 million. Admiral announced that it would be selling its Penguin Portals group, which includes other comparison websites, Barstreeter.com and thelinks.fr, to the owner of rival Uswitch. Zoopla Property Group, which owns Uswitch, will take control of the business through its comparison arm, ZPG. Now let's continue with our discussion on post-Brexit Britain. And to do this, I'm being joined by Bite Oduneye, chair of Nigerians in the Square Mile. Bite Oduneye, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. I've got to say, apart from fatigue, how are you feeling now that the Brexit deal has been signed, sealed, and, as Boris says, delivered?
Relieved. Very much relieved, very much relieved. I mean, up until, I'm sure you're aware, a number of us in the business community, up until last week, from the language, which was both from the European Commission and Boris, it was as if they were preparing us for a definitely they won't get a deal. So it was a brilliant surprise. It's taken uncertainty out of the room, which is paramount for for investments and for us the business community to plan and to move forward. So the fact that they have got a deal has taken away an enormous amount of uncertainty, and it's given a lot to look forward to in the new year, as well as the AstraZeneca. That again has created cleared out a lot of uncertainty. So there's a lot of excitement with the deal. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not ignoring the fact that the global economy is in tatters. We're not ignoring, the complete annihilation of jobs. But I must say, considering the year that we have had, to try and pull a positive spin on it, in as much as it would be difficult, we have survived it. Not all of us did, and for those that lost their lives, we feel terribly, and they will be remembered forever in our hearts. But we have survived it. We have come to the end of 2020 and we're still here. So there are things for us to build on. And the fact that we do have a vaccine and the fact that there has been a Brexit deal with the European Union, for the business community, it's very, very good.
Absolutely. We saw that on Tuesday, the first day of trading after Christmas. I think £34 billion was put into London-focused stocks because there was so much relief, so much sentiment. There's been back and forth for 4.5 years. But there is so many gaps. It is a thin deal. That's what some people have been describing it as, particularly for the financial services sector. Are you surprised that the city hasn't been given as much dominance as it should within the deal, particularly as Boris Johnson calls his Conservative government pro-business?
Well, I think it's still a deal in process, if that makes any sense. I mean, they've done what they need to do to get us over the line. And I think there's just so much involved with the financial services aspect. It's the largest part of the UK economy, very important to the UK economy. But I don't think for 1 second that they'll be left out to dry. I think they'll go into in detail and they'll dot their I's and cross their T's. And I believe the City of London would end up with something that I'm maybe not 100% happy with, but a good 95%.
Absolutely. A lot of commentators over the past couple of years have described Britain as pretty much isolated. Obviously, we are an island. We've decided to separate from our European partners at a time where the world has been grappling with COVID-19. We're one of the worst affected Western nations. It's affected our economy more than most. Do you fear that Britain's global influence is diminishing, particularly in a place like Nigeria, where, as you will know, fintech and so many other great technological organisations are thriving without British interest?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say so is this. The one thing the British economy has been able to do is to reinvent itself. Yes, I agree. The European Union is the largest trading bloc in the world. But under no circumstances are they going to just suddenly stop trading with Europe. It's in Europe's interest to also continue the level of trade they have with the United Kingdom, if possibly increase it. So I think in the short to medium term, yes, there would be some hits, and again, it would be uncertainty. But I don't think we're going to lose a lot of the trade relationships that we currently have with Europe. Britain's influence on the world. So you can look at it. We can look at that in two ways. Now, under no circumstances am I diminishing the largest trading bloc in the world, which is the European Union, but the fastest growing economies of the world do not exist in Europe. The fastest trading economies of the world exist outside Europe. And now Britain can go and make various trading deals with a number of these places without the permission of Europe. With regards to Africa, now, yes, over the years, what we have seen over the last 50 to 75 years is a number of other economies increasing, i.e. China, for example, which has come in and has filled in the void, or maybe not necessarily the void, but a number of things which a number of emerging economies were hoping to see from the West. China is filling in that void, meaning that there's now competition for investment. There's competition for partnership. It wasn't in days gone by where it was strictly one way. So this is what I'm hoping. This is what I'm hoping on. I don't think it diminishes. I think it becomes not harder. Let me say this being very careful, but I think now they've got to be serious about the sort of deals they have with Africa in particular, Nigeria, since we're talking about Nigeria here. It has to be not one-sided, as a number of them have been over the years gone by. It has to also look at the interest of Nigeria, meaning that we are in a position to negotiate much better deals. The same way they have negotiated a fantastic deal with the European Union, it is now that our business leaders, our diplomats, and anyone that represents Nigeria needs to be at their A game.
Absolutely. We're running out of time, Bitair. Got to quote you on you calling Boris Johnson's Brexit deal a fantastic deal. That might come back to haunt you, but you are the chair of Nigerians in the Square Mile. So really, it's people like you that are like right bang centre in the middle of negotiations. How are you going to try and use your influence over the past 12 months to start, getting meetings with members of Downing Street and Alok Sharma, the business secretary, who desperately needs your consultation?
Well,
very briefly.
We've started that, and just to correct myself, especially in the age of social media, it's a fantastic deal considering where we were going. Yeah. Consider where we were 24 hours before the time. It's some sort of certainty. And we've already started these consultations. 3 weeks ago, representing NISM, Nigerians in the Square Mile, we had a virtual roundtable, because there was a trade mission heading to Nigeria. The head of MP for Africa, and a number of them were heading to Nigeria for a trade mission, which I think happened last week. And we had a lot of conversation. But if you think about it, at the time during the virtual roundtable, there hadn't been a Brexit deal. All the conversations that we've been having so far this year, there has been this massive elephant in the room. But now that has been resolved, it is, Juliana, we go into lobbying. I mean, it's not too far along when we spoke earlier on or late last year when we had this the African mission in the UK. Now, no one has been able to build on that, obviously, because COVID suddenly came into the foray. But going forward, now that there is a trade deal, Nigeria has so much to offer. The fintech, as well as a number of sectors in Nigeria. Yes, we are seeing a recession. Yes, we are seeing the oil price coming back. So there is some sort of revenue for the government. We have seen a 40% rally in the Nigerian Stock Exchange, which is, I think, the largest rally globally. So there is hope.
There is hope.
Yeah,
there is hope. Wittel Duneye, it's not enough time. Next time I've got to get you in the studio. But thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.